Okay, I think the recording has started. So, good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining this Tech Talk. We're going to be talking about innovation, and I think it's very appropriate at this time, uh, just after we've had all the accomplishments, all the trains have made so far this year, and even going into the next year. I think innovation is one of those key values that we have at Amazon. And when I was asked to do a tech talk, I thought to myself, like, what can I really talk about? What's something new that we can talk about? And when you're talking about new things, guess what? Innovation is the first thing based on our values that we can talk about. So I will cover why, why should we even bother innovating? And then I'll also talk about what it actually means. And then to round it up, we'll talk about different ways we can make sure that innovation is happening. And I do want to get some of your feedback, what you think, how we are innovating or how we are not innovating, and some ideas. So you can definitely get into that when we get into the Q&A. All right. So let's start with why. I mean, why should we innovate? Why is it even important to innovate in the first place? Now, I'll begin with a personal story, and I ask you, please don't try to calculate my age when you listen to this story. So back when Windows 95 came out, I was in high school, and one of the great things that came out with Windows 95, if you had been paying attention to the evolution of computers, there were like new colorful windows coming out, and also Microsoft had a new language called Quick Basic. This was not the old Basic. This was Quick Basic. You could have colors, even the graphical user interface with Quick Basic. It was great. It was awesome. And when I started computer studies, our capstone project, at least the one that I picked, was to do an inventory control program for a car assembly plant. My dad was working at a Mazda car assembly plant back in Zimbabwe, and it just, you know, when I used to go with them and see how they were doing their inventory, it was all manual. They were doing stuff on paper. And then I started doing computers. I was like, wait, this is a great way. I can get a problem solved for them. So that's how I started jumping into computing. I just found something that I could do, solve problems, be creative, come up with solutions that could actually help people do their work. Unfortunately, for my grade on the capstone, I got a B. I'm pretty ticked off about that. I need to find out whoever graded my project because I think it was state of the art. I mean, back in those days, this was before SAP even came out. I think I did something very innovative using Quick Basic to solve a business problem, but I got a B grade. It's all right, but that never that never stopped my passion for computing. Actually, I kept on pursuing it because I was inspired. Something inside me was driven, and I knew that I could get some creativity. I could solve problems. There was a lot of futuristic things that you could do within computing, and that's why I decided to keep on doing it because of that ability to innovate. Something inside me was sparked. So we go on and start talking about why should we innovate? From a personal level, for me, it was just about the passion, right? We innovate because we're interested, because we have a way to create something. It's just something that lies within you. Other individuals, they like creating businesses. They're, business oriented, they're entrepreneurial. They look at problems, they decide to solve problems for a bigger community, and they do that because they just want to start something new, and that's why they innovate. If you look at this year, particularly, we got this pandemic, right? Some of us became very innovative out of necessity. We had this situation where you have kids in the house, they need to get homeschooled, some form of schooling at the house, and at the same time, you still want to do your job at your house. You have to innovate, you have to think of ways to come up with how you can do things. So, at an individual level, those are some of the drivers that get us to innovate. However, if we look at an organization like us, there's different drivers for innovation. Why should we innovate at a company level? Now, I will tell you that as far as what we experienced from what we got presented today from that meetup introduction, I think Kenny was talking about competition happening in Latin America, where some of our competitors actually disabled a feature. There's a lot of competition out there in the business world, and guess what? If you're trying to make it out there, you have to come up with something. You have to innovate. You have to come up with something new so that you distinguish yourself from the competition out there. Because if you don't innovate, someone else is going to do it. Another company is going to come up with a different product, And if you sleep around, then you're not even gonna miss what's happening. By the time you start trying to pay attention to what's happening, you're probably gonna be losing your stance in the market competition. So definitely to beat the competition, you have to innovate. You need also to have a sustainable business. Imagine yourself just operating in one product space, one product. That won't last forever because in the market, people are going to come up with different other products that will compete with you. And they may actually go into different new customers, new products that are not even what you're working on. So if you're not innovating, guess what? Your customer base is probably going to shift to some more interesting things. And your business is not going to be sustainable because you only focused on one thing. And when that one thing eventually lost out, you didn't have anything else that people could flock to. So you need to have a wide variety of different options out there in your product portfolio. So you have to innovate to be able to do that. You can't just stick to one thing and think that as a business or as a company, you're going to have longevity in the market. So those are some of the reasons when you look at why, whether it's an individual or a company, we do have reasons why we innovate. But before we dig in further, there is that question, what exactly is it when we talk about innovation? I mean, there's a lot of people who talk about, hey, we're innovating, but when you look at what they're doing, it really doesn't look like it. So I went to Google. I was like, you know what? Let me go to Google, find out what innovation means. But for some reason, man, Google gave me like the big number of results. I can't even read it. It's like a trillion, maybe 1.8 trillion, or maybe a zillion. But there were so many results that came out, and they only did it in 0.63 seconds, mind you. Very innovative on their part. But I was like, you know what? Let me just go to the good old Merriam-Webster dictionary and find out what innovation means. And when I looked at that, if you look on the screen and the slide that I'm sharing right now, it's a very simple definition, and it only stands out with one keyword, something new, right? It's a new idea, a method, or a device, or you're introducing something new as a verb, as an action. When you're innovating, it has to be new. So if we dig deeper into that, the traits of innovation, we have to look at, are we doing ground-breaking things? Are we introducing new ideas? Do we have new products? Are we building new platforms? Are we breaking into new markets? We have to be groundbreaking to say we are actually innovating. If none of that is happening, you have to question yourself, what do you think innovation is? And if you looked at that definition, they also mentioned novelty. With novelty comes out creation, right? There's a lot of creativity there. You're inventing, you're building from scratch when there was nothing, whether it's a market, whether it's products, there was nothing before and you came out with something. So there's novelty within innovation. Now, if you think you're innovating and you haven't done any of that, ask yourself again. Then the last thing is also it's experimental. If you look at any of the inventions that came out, whether it's recent or old technologies, one of the things that you'll definitely notice is that there was a lot of experimentation. Like people tried so many times, they failed. Eventually, from what they were failing, they kept on learning new ways of trying to do something until eventually they succeeded. So for you to be innovative, you have to have that space to experiment. You can't just come up with one idea, you run with that idea all the way, and you eventually somehow make it in the market. Innovation takes a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of trial and error, and that's one of the traits. So think again, if you think you're innovating and you haven't done any of this experimentation as far as your approach to building or releasing anything new, uh, yeah, you're probably not innovating. Now, to move on, I wanted to hit on what actually it's not, because a lot of times some of the things that happen within the development and releasing of products, whether it's software or any other type of products, there are certain things that are not innovation. For instance, if you have a product that's been out there and it's been selling really good, it's reaching a maturity, and maybe you're generating new sales, but you haven't really changed this product, it's really reaching its maturity, right? Your sales eventually at some point they're going to plateau, and that's not innovation. You're just getting new sales on top of new sales, and you're reaching a maturity peak on your product. And then sometimes you may be trying to enter a different market, but you still have the same product, and you're like, well, maybe let me change the packaging on this product. What you're really doing you're just putting a different face on it, and we call that rebranding. That's not innovation. You really haven't changed the basis of that product. You're just rebranding, getting into a new market. And then if you have like that same product, probably it has been out there for a while, and then eventually as more people are using it, they start finding things that you never realized were there. There's issues or defects with it. Yes, these defects are new, and now you have to come up with different ways to try to put bandages on that same old product. What you're doing is not really innovation. It's just you're fighting defects now. You're getting into the firefighting mode. Anything new that pops up, you have to fix it immediately. So that's not innovation. That's just, addressing and fixing defects. Now, now that we've identified what those two are, I'll take a minute and then just check with Deanne. Did we get any questions on the chat, or does anyone have any questions before I move on?
No, you only got one smart aleck comment from Dwayne so far.
What did Dwayne say?
He said you must be relatively young because you didn't say back when Windows for Workgroups version 3 was released.
Yeah, I didn't want to go that way there, but at least thanks for commenting that I'm young, because I knew some people will start calculating when I say Windows 95. But Quick Basic, I mean, hey, I don't know. Some people were using Pascal back then, but I think Quick Basic was really a simple tool to do what you could want to do.
I had
All right.
Fortran 4 and punch cards on my first job.
I have no memories of that. But anyways, so to move on, at least we have identified, why we should be innovating. At least we now have a clear distinction of what innovation is and what innovation is not. So I want to start talking more into now how can we actually get to do some of this innovation, right? What are the ways we can do innovation? Now, if you remember in the beginning, I talked about why do individuals get to innovate? What are the reasons why people innovate? I also talked about companies, like why do companies innovate? If you look at those two areas, there's an overlap. So individuals and companies, they eventually overlap whatever their reasons are for innovation. There are common interests that lie between whether it's an individual or a company. And for you to tap into that, that's how you can start getting some innovation juices flowing within your organization. So you have to start tapping in to find out, okay, what are people interested in? Like what's really inspiring them to do whatever they want to do? Like what are we offering as an organization that taps into that interest that they have? If you do find that space where the company interests and the individual interests intersect, guess what? Once people are working within that space, people are going to be just motivated. They'll do the work without much pushing. It's going to be very self-driven. They're very inspired to do it because it's coming out from inside. It's like intrinsic motivation. They don't have to be told a lot to do. Maybe they just want to see what the vision is, what outcomes are we expecting. But for the most part, people are going to be self-driven, and they will do what it takes to get that innovation going on. And with that, people actually enjoy doing their work. So the key here is let's find what that overlap is. People have different interests. The organization also has interests. If we find that overlap and create that space where people can have the motivation to deliver what they want to do and be self-driven, you've tapped into one of the key elements that will get innovation to happen. It doesn't matter whether you're using new software, whether you're using the latest technology, all those things don't matter. Innovation comes from within. So the goal is let's try to find what that space is. If we find it, if we tap into it and maximize on it, you're just going to get innovation naturally flowing from people. Now, the next thing to talk about is techniques to actually get us to innovate, right? We have all these ideas. Now these people are out there. They got this thing that they found that's very interesting within the company. But how do you get all those brilliant ideas organized? How do you get them to collaborate and get them to actually produce something? Guess what? We do have something called design thinking. And thankfully, we actually have a team out there with HCD that they have a lot of techniques on design thinking, skills, materials that we can use from them. They've actually done a bunch of boot camps on how to do a bunch of these techniques under design thinking umbrella. Design thinking doesn't just lie for, let's say we have a new epic or we got a new feature that we're trying to work on. Design thinking just doesn't apply to, hey, we got this screen that we need to change the size or we need to put another item on the menu. How will it look like? Design thinking goes beyond that. So let's expand on those techniques. We could use these techniques even when we're trying to come up with an architectural design. How do we collaborate across people? We could use design thinking techniques even in our meetings. We don't have to stick to the regular format of, hey, we got a meeting, let's take meeting notes. We can create visual spaces, we can collaborate, brainstorm together, drill down on actions. Even when we're trying to get feedback from customers, we don't necessarily have to be on site. We can do remote collaboration, we can send surveys, we can do polls. There's different techniques out there to get that feedback we need from customers, all thanks to design thinking techniques. So let's not, stick on this bubble that we only have to talk to ACD when we have a UI. There's other things they can help us with, and let's reach out to them because they do have a lot of things under the umbrella. And when it comes to design thinking, the main goal, like I just put on that image there, is to make sure that we are having the space to diverge our ideas and thoughts first. So bring out all those ideas. There's nothing stupid when it comes to design thinking. Bring out all those ideas, suggestions, and whatnot. Then eventually, once you've brought them out, we have to converge and start narrowing down to say, okay, maybe this is the one we can try out. If it doesn't work, we come back, we do it again. So let's have that approach, be open to all ideas, and then start narrowing down to find out what's the first thing you can try. If it doesn't work, try it again. Keep experimenting. So that's an approach we can take with design thinking techniques. And now the last thing I'll talk about in 2 slides is how do we strategize to make sure that we have innovation happening. So I think recently you probably heard a lot about outcomes over outputs, have an outcome-driven roadmap and things like that. And it's very crucial as well when it comes to strategizing for your innovation. What does that mean? How do we do it? So if you come up with a strategy that's outcome-driven, the first thing that you really want is to be clear what your outcome for innovation is. If we're saying we're innovating for this space, what does it mean? What are the outcomes? Are we coming up with new products? Are we tapping into new markets? Is it a new world area? Be very specific what your outcome is for that innovative thing that you're trying to do. And when you do that, when you look back into your roadmap, you probably have a lot of different products out there that you're trying to tackle, maybe many epics, but make sure you do have a balance between some things that you're trying to maintain that are existing, and then balance that out with the new things that you're trying to explore. You have to have a balanced portfolio. You can't just focus on the same old things. They probably are making money, but if you don't create space within that portfolio for the innovative stuff, the new things that may not necessarily make money today, we don't even have a market for them. But guess what? Maybe 5, 10 years from now, if we experiment on that space, we're probably going to get the next cash cow that comes from those things. So you have to balance your portfolio of products. And then once you've done that, you've laid out what your vision and outcomes are, you have your balanced portfolio, come back around. You have those inspired people around you. Let's start grouping them to make sure that they're teamed up around the values that you want on that portfolio, right? So make sure you team people along those lines that you're trying to deliver for your product portfolio. After you've done that, the last thing is just support. Support people, reward them with the right things for being innovative. I mean, right now, I got a t-shirt. I didn't work on the PK team, but thanks to the PK team, I now have a t-shirt from Amazon. You get rewarded for being innovative. I think we actually got cookies at one time. I think it was like last month, Tiffany Treats, something to do with PK as well. So PK team, thanks for being innovative. We're getting cookies and t-shirts. Thanks to you. But that's just another example of being rewarded for being innovative, for doing the right thing. And the last thing on strategizing as well that I wanted to touch on is if you're looking at how you're strategizing product-wise, initially I talked about a competitive market, right? So if you look at your strategy for the product, you have to also think about, okay, what strategy am I going to build if I'm trying to be innovative? Am I going to follow a red ocean strategy? And the red ocean strategy is when you're operating your product in a space where there is, everyone is trying to release something or have products within that same market. It's cutthroat. It's like an ocean full of sharks, and they're all biting each other, and there's a lot of blood flowing out there. That's why it's called the red ocean. There's a lot of competition, and for you to actually be innovative, it's hard because you have to start making these decisions like, should I spend so much money or do I really need to value? You can only do one thing. If I try to release something, but then it's going to be more expensive, then I can't do it. So that's the red ocean. It's hard to innovate there. So if your product strategy is based around there, you might need to rethink it. Blue ocean strategy is when you're actually out there intentionally going for new markets, new products. Nothing is has been touched over there. Maybe people think you're crazy for even trying it, but you're really creating new demands because there's nothing out there. And when you do that, when you're experimenting, your cost of experimentation is probably going to be very low. But the trade-off, or when you do get value, you can actually get high value with low cost when you operate in that space. And you have room to experiment. If you try something, if you're doing lean startup approach, something fails, you can quickly stop it. You don't have to spend so much money on something that you know is not going to make it. So that's part of your strategizing. Now, to just wrap it up and bring it home, I think I wanted to just take a moment to really celebrate all that innovation. It's nothing new that I'm talking about, but it's really something that needs to be re-emphasized because sometimes we may get complacent. But I figured, you know what? Let me do something that can actually help people to remember that we are innovating here. Now, I'm going to try to play something and let me know if you can hear it. If you can't, I will do this another time. Can you guys hear what's playing in my background?
I cannot.
You cannot. Okay.
No,
All
if
right.
you're playing up from your laptop, there's you got to share your desktop audio or sound or something like that. I don't remember how to do that.
All right. You know what? I won't let this one go. All right. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and I'll try again. How about that? So let me do another share and then, okay, include computer sound. All right.
Correct.
Do you guys see the deck again?
Yes.
All right. So I just thought we should celebrate, take a moment, start celebrating some of the innovation that we've done. Can you hear the sound now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Now, if you know this song, you know it's about celebration, but we had to put something for innovation. Mm.
Are you gonna dance there, Nigel?
It's your innovation.
That's what's
It's your innovation.
Innovate, good time, come on. Let's innovate. Innovate, good time, come on.
All right.
Let's innovate.
That goes out for innovation. We are doing a lot of innovation. We do have to celebrate that when it happens. Now, that was some local Austin talent there from within our company. Their names will remain anonymous, but if you can guess who they were, there's a bonus prize that will come for you. Um, so yeah, so bringing it home, we have been doing this, and I just wanted to stress that let's not give up on innovation. I know we had like times where we just focused on bug fixing. That wasn't innovative, but with the new year that's coming out, with the new roadmaps that have been created, let's not forget to innovate. Don't become complacent. We have some products that made it, but guess what? If we want to keep on making it in the future, let's keep on innovating. So you may think there's some boundaries that stop us from innovation, but guess what? You have to start questioning them. Talk to your manager, talk to your team, talk to anyone out there. Validate that to see, hey, if I have a new idea, is this really something crazy that cannot happen? The worst that you can do is just it will be turned down, come up with something new again, and that's that culture of experimentation, right? So let's keep innovating. That's the takeaway here. And if you're wondering where we can get all this information, we got a lot of stuff that has happened before. We changed from Provox to Delta V. We have some customer engagement going on right now. Hackathons are happening. Even I'm a part of Toastmasters. I got to learn some skills to help me to be innovative. There's a lot of things out there. So let's keep that up and keep innovating. Please don't forget to innovate. Now, with that, I will stop. And if there's anyone with questions, I do believe we have about 5 minutes left. So any questions, please bring them forward. We can carry on the discussion.
I didn't see any questions posted, Nigel, just comments about your dancing.
Oh boy.
Hey Nigel, I'd probably like to emphasize that part of innovation is overcoming fear of basically failure. Essentially, you can't innovate without the possibility and likelihood that you'll fail a few times in the process. So we need to bring that home as well.
Yep, definitely. Like I think I can't remember what the statistics were, but I think Microsoft was actually opening up to say, out of a lot of experiments they tried, the percentage of success was like super low. Like I think it was below 15%. Like of all, let's say they tried 100 things, the things that actually became successful were only 15. So yeah, there's a lot of failure, but you gotta be experimental to be able to be innovative in the market. Thanks for that, Derek. Anyone else with any questions? Or you're ready to go to the next?
I guess there's talk about there should be some sort of there's like the two like the Venn diagram with the individual and the company where you and that's I think they're trying to think of that's how you create I guess strategic initiatives and I guess spark some innovation.
Yeah.
It seems like there should be some sort of collaboration, but what about if it's just like top down from like the company pushing a strategic initiative to the individual? Like, does that also work or not work? I feel like you wouldn't get that motivation or the self-drive if it's just the company's pushing strategic initiatives such as
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I think, like I said, it has to be an overlap, right? Where we identify what the interests of individuals are, and based on what we need, there's probably people with ideas on how, let's for instance, reduce waste, and the company says, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And if we just create the space to say, hey, we need this, who's interested in it? What ideas do you have? People will jump into it who are interested, and they can come up with different things. Like the how part of it, I think people can just, whoever is passionate about it will come up with a lot of things. But yeah, you're right. Typically, when it comes top down, you eventually lose the motivation and the inspiration to do something. Any thoughts? Any questions? All right. So I think, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, there are other discussions about to start, right? Or they've already started?
I'm sorry.
The discussions for the other meetup discussions.
For the leadership team? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those are going on. They just started a few minutes ago.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to try to do, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to stop recording. And then for those who want to go ahead to the discussions, feel free. I'll hang around maybe for 5 more minutes while I'm trying to shut things down. But feel free to ask me any questions if you have while I'm trying to shut things down. And thank you guys for your participation. And let's, keep on innovating. Don't forget to innovate.